This was a fun part of our recent Breaking Down Reserve Funding webinar. In this section, I used our online reserve calculator called uPlanIt to demonstrate creating a funding plan for an actual association. I showed our audience how much the funding plan changes with different assumptions for interest, inflation, and funding goal. Then I pretty much drained the association's reserve fund to create some scarcity, showing what a difference the starting balance makes. And finally, to make things even a bit crazier, I brought a significant expense forward to create an emergency situation. Unfortunately, this is an all too common problem. No cash and a big bill to pay. So in this portion of the webinar, I show how interest, inflation, funding goal, starting balance, size, and timing of upcoming reserve projects all affect creation of a reserve funding plan for your association. And now we'll get to a fun part of the program. I'm going to spend a few minutes showing some actual examples of developing a funding plan. And I have to be careful here because I could spend a lot of time on this. As I've done in other webinars, it's easy to demonstrate by using your online reserve calculator, uPlanIt. It's a $399 tool that comes free with all our professional reserve studies. So let me now drop the PowerPoint and call up my web browser. There we go. And I'm logged into our client center with a user profile that is as if you were a portfolio manager. We've got a number of properties here, and I did my practicing on the sample 5-building townhome, so let's pick that. You can see the reserve study here, user account management, and then uPlanIt. So you see the components here. It's just a long list. Don't worry about reading that. Control panel is starting balance, interest, inflation. Recommendations is where we do the fiddling around, the figuring out, and the tables and charts. So I want to show you for this association, we've given them an easy start. Not too many expenses in the early years, big expenses in the later years. And they are starting at about 70% funded. So we're going to start the demonstration a little bit easy here. So we've got an association with expenses downstream, and they have a pretty good starting point. You remember 70% is kind of the beginning of reserve fund strength. So if we pick a full funding solution, if you're taking notes, you can write down $4,990 per month. That's what it's going to cost. If we pick a baseline solution, and look at this, this is going to tune into the 100% line. Pick baseline. It stays cash positive, but it's closer to zero. That's what it's trying to do. Trying to miss zero, trying to miss zero, trying to miss zero. And the funding here is $3,730. And that is about 25% less. Okay? And that's pretty typical. It's typically about a 20% difference, 15 to 20% difference between full funding and baseline funding. Remember, it's the same. Expenses haven't changed. You're just saying, do I just want to be above zero, or do I want to have a little bit of margin and insulate myself from special assessments? The point in that when you save money here in the reserve funding, you often make it up with a special assessment here, or here, or here, or all three. Once every 10-year special assessment. So again, the expenses are the expenses. There's no getting around that the roof is going to be what the roof is going to be. It's going to fail. All right, let's play around with some numbers. First thing I want to show you is the influence of the inflation. It was 3%. What do you say we pop it up to 4%? Save that. And we were at that baseline solution, and now you can see with higher inflation, that makes all these expenses bigger and taller, and you see the association now crashes and burns. So it was $3,730, and now to be baseline funded, it's going to be $4,450, and that is about a 19% difference, 20% difference. And that is typical. For a 1-point change in inflation, it's going to affect your funding by about 20+%. That's just the way it is. When all these expenses get bigger, even by a little bit, it's going to change your funding requirements a lot. And that's why we try to be real stable with the use of our inflation factors. We don't want to be too sensitive to inflation that's just going to be a 1, 2, 3, 4-year project and apply that same 8% or so inflation for 30 years. We have no expectation that's going to happen. Okay, so about a 20% change in reserve funding for every 1% change in inflation. Let's change that back to 3%, get back to kind of normal. And let's now change the interest from 1% up to 2%. Okay, so this is in the association's favor. And I wrote down that 37, no, I got too many numbers here. 3770, let's go baseline again. 3620, or a baseline solution, and at 1%, yeah, 3730 versus 3620, about a 3% difference. 6%, 5 or 6% is usually the difference of a single point change in interest, and that's because interest is fundamentally less influential, because interest is only earned on the actual cash that you have in the bank, whereas inflation works its, I want to say, ugly effect on all these expenses over 30 years, not just the cash that you have right now. Okay, so let's reset this to normal, and there we go. Now, what do you say we cause some trouble here? The big expenses are out here. We gave this association a pretty easy start. So there's a couple things that we can do. What do you say we reduce their cash? They're right now sitting at just under $300,000. That was 70% funded. Let's say these people at this association only have 50 grand in reserves. They are now 12% funded. So they're starting out at a weak position. And I've reset interest and inflation. So we're going to compare to the normal numbers. Full funding initially was $49.90 per month. And with a weaker starting position, it's now going to cost them $56.10 per month and a $40-some thousand special assessments, about $1,300 per unit. So with exactly the same expenses, the point is that when you have a weaker starting point, it's going to cost you more. You have more catching up to do. You're scared of upcoming expenses. And there's another way to skin the cat. If you're really weak, you say, hey, let's not worry about full funding in 25 or 30 years. Let's just worry about staying alive, getting the projects done. Now, notice that full funding looks kind of like baseline funding for the first 10 years. So if we do baseline, remember it's 5610 here. What's baseline do? It knocks it up to 5850. It's a little bit more, but the special assessment is less. So when you have a lot of expenses early and you're in a weak position, full funding doesn't really cost you a whole lot more because you got big trouble right out the gate. Okay? Let's see, what else can we do? You guys ready for more trouble? Let's make more trouble. What do you say we don't give them an easy start? What do you say we move the roof project to the initial year? So my notes, it's component 1303. Let's edit this and change it from being 7 years away to being immediate, 0 years away. Okay, that's done. Let's take a look at it. Boom. Now they have a big roof project in that initial year. Looks a lot better out here, but now we've got what? Trouble. Because we've got a little over $100,000 of expenses in the first year. We're starting with 50 grand. And I hope you're all shaking your heads thinking, this association's in a hard way. So what's this mean? Higher monthly assessments and bigger special assessments. So let's see what is needed. For a full solver, and not surprising, a little over $100,000 special assessment to get them over that hump and to get them pushed enough, kind of like a rocket launch, to get them going, to get fully funded downstream. Or if all you're focusing on is staying alive, baseline solver, $100,000 special assessment, but still $5,600. That's more than full funding was when we had a strong starting point and when we weren't having a last-minute catastrophe for the roof imminently leaking. So those are a little bit of the options that we have here. You can see we have a few choices. We could do something we call the exercise plan, which is start it lower and steepen it up. So instead of 5,600, let's try maybe 3,600. And instead of it rising at 3% a year, let's boost it at 10% a year. So you can see it's steeper in the first few years. Oh, but they crash and burn. So that doesn't work. Let's try 4,000. Yeah, they barely make it. Okay? So there's different things we can do. If you're in a real jam and the problem is we can get through the roof project with an immediate special assessment, and maybe we can soften it for the owners by ramping them up for a few years to get them through this next big set of expenses. Different things we can do. And that's some of the things we can work with when we're dealing with cash flow funding. All right. So what I want to say is your starting point matters. The mixture, the blend of your expenses matters. Interest and inflation matters. Your funding goal matters if you're trying to be conservative. But again, for some associations, we're just trying to keep you alive, just trying to get you so you have enough cash to get you through the upcoming projects. So there's some of the things in the mix. At Association Reserves, we make the present less stressful and the future more secure. If you want to join us in this mission, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment down below on what you'd like to see us address in a future video. Let's plan for your best future.